how quickly we can iterate and make subtle improvements in order to just always keep that bike just exactly the way we want it. And that's the difference between something handmade and something that's mass-produced. Hi, I'm Tony Ellsworth. Thanks for coming and getting a little factory tour and giving me an opportunity to showcase the handmade bikes that we do here in Vancouver, Washington. This is a raw Ellsworth tube. This is our cross-country down tube. And you see that they come to us actually swaged and tapered in the United States from drawn seamless aluminum. Drawn seamless means that there's no seam, it wasn't extruded. What you should be able to see inside there is the tapers. You see the colors change, I'll move it around a little bit. But the smooth internal tapers inside the tube. So we start with the tube and then out of the drawn seamless material, and then we taper the wall thickness. Some people know it also as butting. Back in the day, they used to butt steel tubes, but those were hard edges, hard steps inside the steel tube. But now we use modern drawing techniques to actually draw the tube over mandrels and change the wall thickness as it goes down the tube. So this is an aluminum tube, and although aluminum is highly plentiful, because it's so highly engineered, its character is very repeatable. And then it's what you do with the aluminum, it's what you do with the material that makes the aluminum special. Swaging, shaping, and tapering. And all the shaping for our tubes are specific for the size and the model of the frame. So we start with a specific tube that's been specifically tapered and swaged for a specific frame, and then we shape it. We do some final shaping that also is specific to the frame. Because we only make a few thousand frames in here a year, we can actually shape them by hand, and it actually allows us to, rather than get married to any one specific shape, we can change the shape of our tubes to get the character we want out of the frames, even just a handful at a time. One of the advantages of the shaped tubing is that we're able to shape very specifically the tube for each frame that we make. And we're able to tune the characteristics of the shaping so that we can really get the feel of the frame that we're looking for. How perfectly the tubes fit together makes a really big difference in how the bike rides. Madeline will sand and clean that up prior to it being welded. Okay, so the miters are super important, and you can see how they are here in this frame, how they're just perfectly meeting up with the tubes. You can't get a business card or a credit card or even a piece of paper in the space between the tubes, so that the energy that is conducted from the ground up through the wheel, up the fork into the head tube, that energy is conducted perfectly down the tubes without being interrupted with a bunch of weld fill or anything like that. Also, welds weigh. Each bead of a weld, is a gram or two, and if you had to fill the mitered space up with weld, that would add weight to your frame. So keeping the miters perfect is important in how the frame feels, as well as how light the frame is, and then, of course, how strong the frame is by having the tubes match perfectly. The larger surface area of this tube actually welds through to the head tube all the way up, and then the top tube miters against it. This is where the tapering is. It's a little thicker here, and then thinner immediately, very thin here. And then you can tell where this gets horizontally bigger down at the bottom bracket. All of that shape and taper and swage all goes to give this frame a very specific handling characteristic, which is dialed in week after week as we make the bikes and ride the bikes and dial in the performance and the handling of the bike. This is actually the seat post assembly. And we put this together ahead of time so that you can see this tube welds all the way around the bottom bracket. Now the bottom bracket with the pivot in it actually looks like this. You see all the machining that's been done on this ahead of time to get it light yet keep it as strong as it needs to be in order to do its job. The bottom bracket is machined and shaped so that there's weld surface area for the C tube and full weld surface area also for the down tube. So you never have the down tube mitered against or cut a spot where it's not welded circumferentially all the way around the tubes. This is something that we've honed and done over 18 years of making bikes. So we know it makes a stronger, more durable bike, more durable joint. So these are just some of the pretty machine jewelry that actually come off of the horizontal milling station from our machine division. And the really cool thing about our horizontal milling station is it has 6 pallets, each with a tombstone on it. And it'll actually run with about 30% less aluminum because it's able to do the machining from 3 axes at a time. So this pallet turns and gets the front of this part, and then could turn and get the side of that same part, could turn this way and get the other side of the same part. So the precision we're able to maintain is increased because nobody's actually changing the parts on the machine. The machine's holding at one time, and all the critical components, all the critical dimensions are all held perfectly as it rotates through its axis and is machined this way, this way, this way. So it's pretty cool. It also uses about 30% less material, and it'll run all night long. This is an example of fixturing that we have that's dedicated to make sure that all the pivots are precisely located so that the instant center tracking is executed perfectly. This is how we get and keep zero energy loss suspension. Chevy's an awesome welder and literally welds every single one. Let's follow Chevy and see him tack this one together. Yeah, you take it, Chevy. Go ahead. So at Ellsworth, we weld every frame by hand. And we have one person, 1 or 2 people, that are specifically responsible for all the welds that are done on the frames. The Chevy here that you see takes a great deal of pride in welding every single frame. I mean, the accountability in that craftsmanship really, I believe, manifests itself in the end product. You know, if it were a production frame, they maybe have one person doing the tacking and another person doing the welding one tube and another person welding another tube. And it's not that that's not a good process to use in production, but I believe there's an art in what Chevy does. Every bead he lays is very precise, and he takes a lot of pride in every single weld that's done on the frames. And so we pretty much have one person handling all the welding on the frames. And if we need more, then another person would be responsible for a different model, so that there's a pride of ownership and craftsmanship in every frame that's welded and in the work that they do. You see how the weld is penetrated inside the tube. Now, you want just the right amount of penetration. Too much and it causes stress risers. Not enough and you have a weld that's cold and hasn't properly mixed the metal. So all of the Ellsworth head tubes start as this is a highly machined part from drawn seamless aluminum, and it's got external shaping as well as internal tapering. I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera, but this is internally tapered here so that the middle section of our head tube, which doesn't have near the forces on it that the outside sections do, is nice and thin. So just to kind of give you the finished result of Chevy's artwork, you see every single one of those beads Chevy laid, and they are perfect.
After we finish welding the frame, it goes through the solution heat treat process. And what that means is when we're done welding, we create all this artificial stress on different areas of the frame, and that kind of twists and turns it and makes it want to spring back to where it was. So the solution heat treating process basically takes it back to a real pliable state. It makes it just relaxed so we can align it later. You could say something's aircraft certified, and what do they know? What does that mean to the average consumer? What it means is it gives us consistency every time. Every time this frame comes out of the solution, comes out of the tank, it's exactly the same every time.
So one of the other things we do to keep the frames straight and pure to their design intent is a 3-stage alignment process. So when we tack the frame, we align it. Then we weld the frame out, we align it again. And then finally, after it's heat treated and it's in its soft state, we align it again. And then we age it. After it's aged, it's hard and it's perfect. Through those 3 straightening processes or alignment processes, we were able to keep that frame very, very close to its straight position through the whole process. You see this finished frame is pretty much straight before it ever goes on the alignment table. And we check the critical location of every part. Right, there's a checker there to make sure that the shock's straight. We've got a checker here to check the location of that pivot. This, of course, checks the perpendicularity of the seat post to the bottom bracket. This, of course, checks the parallelism of the head tube and the seat tube and perpendicularity to the bottom bracket. Every Ellsworth frame is aligned 3 times. Here at Ellsworth, we actually have a dedicated fixture for each model, and then each fixture, when we go to set up the bikes for that run, has to fit back in its dedicated fixture, so that every single run of bikes we do, whether we do a handful this week and a handful next week, or if we were to do 100 this week and 100 next week, every single one of those frames would be exactly the same from run to run. We pretty much stay right on the money, plus or minus 1/10 of a degree, frame after frame after frame. And again, the concept there is to have a frame that is hand-built, but hand-built with the precision that technology would allow it to be built with. The neat thing about this is this frame doesn't get painted. There's no Bondo or filler on this frame like might happen in a production facility. This frame is all done by hand, and every weld, every tube is perfect, so that when it's anodized, you're seeing the perfection of that in an anodized form.